The following is a presentation of ESPN on ABC.
Downtown Detroit, and just there in the center of the river, Belle Isle, a beautiful state park transformed into a rough and rugged race course for the weekend. It's the second half of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader presented by Steel. Fans have come out on a day that started with rain, has since become very nice and sunny, should make for a great race. There's the grid, the drivers and crews all gathered, getting ready to go. Some drivers needing to recover from a rough first half of this doubleheader weekend, others with a key day in their hopes to stay relevant in the championship chase, while others looking for a much-needed win to try and turn their seasons around. So Saturday, the first half of the doubleheader, Scott Dixon started second behind Marco Andretti, followed Andretti till the opening set of pit stops. Then his crew got its work done 2 seconds quicker. It leapfrogged Dixon into the lead. He would never look back except on an exchange of pit stops the rest of the day. Graham Rahal had a terrific run going, led a couple of laps, ran as high as second, then this, a hard crash off of turn number 12. Listen. Fortunately, Rahal was able to walk away from that crash okay. His team has prepared the backup car for today. Another big hit. Rookie Santino Ferrucci hit by Charlie Kimball at high speed, turn 7. He buries it into the tire wall. A huge hit. Welcome to IndyCar racing, but fortunately Ferrucci able to climb from the car and he was okay. In the end, it was Scott Dixon scoring his 42nd career Verizon IndyCar Series win, tying him for third all-time with Michael Andretti. Dixon spraying the champagne as the winner on Saturday. Then qualifying this morning, just before 11 o'clock Eastern Time, in wet conditions. Yes, that front wing on Tony Kanaan's car is askew, a crash on his out lap. Kanaan will start in the last row of the grid. Others who had difficulty in the wet qualifying session included Ryan Hunter-Reay. First to trip into the turn 3 runoff, then this spin in turn number 8. His fastest lap in qualifying was docked from him for bringing out the local yellow. Hunter-Reay will start in 10th position. Josef Newgarden, last year's champion, in turn 11. Into the tire barriers. He brought out a red flag, lost his 2 fastest laps. Newgarden will start 19th. No such troubles for Alexander Rossi. He won his second pole of the season. He's with Jan Bikas a few moments ago.
And Alan, this comes at a perfect time for Alexander Rossi because, Alexander, you said yesterday the one thing you were lacking was clean air. Now you have that clean air. What's the game plan?
Yeah, just get a good start and really try and open up the gap as much as possible. I think I know everyone's starting on reds around me, so it'll be a kind of a similar situation to yesterday. Who can make the reds last the longest? Hopefully we'll be in a position to be able to do that again and just have clean air the whole race and be able to control it.
Now, what can you learn from your teammate Marco Andretti? Because he had a similar situation. He led the whole first stint, but then was leapfrogged by Scott Dixon. Knowing that now, what can you do differently?
Try and open up a bigger gap. I mean, I think Marco and really all of us were concerned about how long the tires were going to last. So in hindsight, I think you would have pushed harder because the Firestone Reds held on for quite a while. But you don't know that then, so hindsight's a beautiful thing that rarely we get to apply, but today we do.
Well, you talk about hindsight being a beautiful thing. Remember, he has qualified on the pole on 2 other occasions, Watkins Glen and Long Beach. On both of those occasions, he won. Rick?
Well, and speaking of winners, Scott Dixon was the winner here yesterday, and that's an impressive achievement here in Detroit. But more importantly, it was your 42nd career victory, tying you with Michael Andretti, only behind Mario and AJ. Now, drivers always say we don't think about the numbers, but that has to weigh heavily on you and make you think about that.
Yeah, it sounds cool. And I think for us, we're very fortunate to still be in an era that, AJ, Mario, Michael are still at the track, and it just shows how much they love the sport and the passion that they have for it. And for me, I feel lucky and privileged to be racing, let alone what we've accomplished, with Chip, 41 of those wins, one with Pac West, way back when I was a little bit younger. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy, the Verizon IndyCar Series so much and love, occasionally trying to get a win. They're pretty hard to get these days, man. The competition is tough, but we'll try and go for number 43 today.
All right, let's talk about number 43. It's hard to do back-to-back here. What's your strategy? 2, 3, what's the plan?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see how it plays out. I think that the two should be a little bit easier, on the Reds today, at least in the first stint, but that can change quickly. We were a little bummed we were on a big lap in qualifying and Newgarden stuffed it on the wall there and caused the red. Otherwise, I think we would be starting on the pole. But congrats to Rossi. It's been a big weekend for Honda, and hopefully we can capture another podium lockout, at least for Honda here in Detroit.
Or possibly that 43rd victory.
Thanks.
Rick, thanks, and hello from the Motor City. Alan Bestwick, Eddie Cheever, Scott Goodyear. So, two unique things about this race weekend. It is the most physically demanding track on the drivers, and they have to do it not once but twice. How they handle it today?
A very bumpy racetrack as you talk about. You think about the bumps on a street circuit, the manhole covers, concrete patches. We feel that. As drivers, and I'm not sure about you, when we were here, I used to take Advil before I got in the car because this place is just so rough. So when you think about it, you're coming along these city streets, watch the cars move around here. Bumps, drivers are bumping into each other. Watch this car here on the left-hand side, Robert Wickens, up and down on the bumps. Watch the inside wheel here in some of these Penske cars, and you'll see the wheels coming off the ground here on Will Power's car, Eddie.
These guys are great athletes, so I don't think physically it's going to be that difficult for them. They'll all manage to do it. The tough thing is mental toughness. If you let up your focus for just one little bit, you're going to go into the wall.
And no room for error on this tight street course here in Detroit. Huge day with championship implications for some. After Indianapolis and after the outcome of yesterday's race here, some like, for example, Josef Newgarden, who before the Indy 500 was the championship leader, now finds himself down in 4th position. Big day.
I think they are in complete damage control right now. They had an amazing Indy 500 Power 1, but here they're struggling. Honda is really quick, so they're going to have to scratch and fight and do everything they possibly can to get all the points they must have going into that tough summer stretch.
But when you talk about here, this is Roger Penske's event. This is his home city. He ran the Super Bowl here. All his customers and clients are here. Penske Corporation is located here. Drivers will feel the pressure to win for Roger Penske. I think Chevy's not as strong here at this racetrack as the Honda cars are. Chevy certainly had an advantage at Indianapolis. I'm not so sure it has it here.
Now let's find out what some of the Chevy drivers are thinking. We go back to Rick.
Well, standing by with the Chevy drivers, and Will Power, remember yesterday, right before the race, Bobby Rahal came up and said, "Welcome to the club." Well, you had a race since then. Do you still feel like you're special in that club?
Yeah. Well, definitely yesterday was pretty tough. It's as hard as I've ever fought for 7th place. Obviously, the Honda Power Curve's really suited to this track, but qualifying 3rd gives us a better shot at a podium. I think that's kind of realistic, but if you never know how yellows fall and all that sort of thing. So if we got a win, that would be just fantastic for Roger.
And he's starting close to the front, which helped. All right, Josef Newgarden, coming into this weekend, you were the points leader. You lost that edge yesterday. What's the goal today? Just a win, or is it points?
I think it's probably damage limitation at this point, but it's a street circuit, so anything can happen. We're starting 19th, so it's not ideal, but we're going to try and mix the strategy up, see if we can get lucky with a yellow. I think you have to hope for that on a day like today, but we're trying to use our car speed. Hitachi car's been good. We're looking for that last little bit, like Will said. Him and me, we were fighting for 7th, 8th place yesterday, and we were working our butts off. So we got to find a little bit more speed, but we feel good about what we've got today. And like I said, it's a street course. Anything can happen on these type of days.
All right, the Chevy boys are ready to go to work.
Rick, thanks. We begin finding out what actually will happen and get the command to start engines when we come back to Detroit. Ready for the Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Steel. Second end of the weekend doubleheader. Day that started out very rainy has suddenly become sunny and warm, and should be interesting for the drivers and teams to deal with as they navigate this 14-turn street course for some 70 laps. Let's give you a look at the course facing the drivers today. Our track map is brought to you by Mother's Polish and features James Hitchcliffe.
And here we are for a lap of Belle Isle, the duels in Detroit. Here, across the start-finish line, bumping front straight into one of the fastest complexes you'll ever see on the street circuit. 120 miles an hour minimum. Good run out of turn 2 is key for the blast down to the best passing opportunity on the racetrack in turn 3. Hard on the brakes, down to 2nd gear. Transition onto concrete, which we're going to see for a lot of the lap here. Turn 4 here, tricky right combination. That things onto the back straight. Turn 5, very bumpy on entry. Turn 6, uphill a little bit. Up a gear. Very important to get the good run out of turn 6. Use every inch of racetrack. Very bumpy back straightaway. They call it a straightaway, but as you can see, there's a lot of turning involved. braking setup for turn 7. Opens up a little bit here on entry. Another good passing opportunity in the race. Here, the most technical section of the racetrack. Turn 9, full gear. Long turn 10, balancing the throttle. Then hard on the brakes, keep the back end in line. For turn 11, 55 miles an hour. First gear, good run out of here. Back down to the last section. 2 corners just under 90 degrees. Progressively faster on the throttle. And again, great lap here at Belle Isle.
Yeah, drivers be pretty busy for the next couple of hours trying to navigate their way not only around all of those turns and shifting of gears up and down, but the traffic as well, trying to stay off those double concrete barriers. Drivers are buckled in. Let's go trackside for the command to get the Detroit Grand Prix. Race 2 underway.
Race fans, it's time for the most famous words in all of sports. Please welcome today's Grand Marshal, General Motors Vice President of Global Vehicle Components and Subsystems, Ken Kelzer.
Drivers, start your engines.
Two pace laps, then a green flag. We go racing here in the Motor City. Back live at Detroit, and the race has stopped before it even really got started. The pace car spun and hit the wall, exiting the pit lane over that hump that comes off onto the racetrack. You see the safety team is there with the pace car and its occupants. They're going to try and motion the field around, although I think most of the drivers have shut the engines off by now. Watch this. Just bizarre.
It's like he wasn't expecting to see the two-seater there.
And that is one of the fastest sections of the racetrack for a race car at speed.
Just accelerating and hit something, or...
Yeah, I think he just got on the gas, unfortunately, and the back end came around because the back end gets light going over that hump. So,
Oriol Serbia is the pace car driver. There you see the passenger and the pace car driver coming out. No, that is not Oriol. That's Mark Royce of General Motors. So the field is all stopped. Alexander Rossi drove around and continued around to the back of the field, but everybody stopped there as the engine shut off. And I have to say, I can't recall seeing this in all my years doing this. I've seen the pace car stolen once,
yes,
years ago. But for now, everybody stopped, and we're obviously going to be a minute while this gets cleaned up. The Honda two-seater was away, and that's Ari Lyondike Jr. driving, and Trey Wingo getting the ride along in the back seat. HondaRacing.com has more Honda racing content. So obviously a delay in getting this race started. Give us an opportunity to take a break here. The field is stopped, and the race is stopped before it has gotten started. Glad to see everyone has climbed from that car and is okay. But for now, we're in a holding pattern here in Detroit. There is the live scene. The raceway at Belle Isle, Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steele, stopped before it got started. The car's just leaving the pit lane when guest pace car driver lost control over a very difficult hump at a very fast spot on the racetrack and hit the wall. They are both out and okay, the occupants of the pace car. But again, the field all shutting their engines off, not driving through the accident scene, except for Alexander Rossi, who avoided it and has come back around to the pit lane. They're going to reposition all the cars, bring them back around to the pit lane. They brought remote starters out to the scene. Of course, these cars, if you're new to IndyCar racing, with no onboard starters, so the safety trucks are all equipped with them, the AMR safety team. They'll fire those cars up, make them drive around to the pit lane and reform, and then we'll start the whole process over again. I can only imagine the drivers sitting there behind the wheel just getting these bits and pieces of information from their race teams and going, oh, goodness. And thankfully everybody's okay. Strategy, we touched on it a little bit in some of the interviews before the green, will be a massive part of this race. Jan Beekes has more to let us know what we might see.
It will, Alan. And of course, yesterday we had the example. You heard Alexander Rossi say, well, hindsight is a great thing because now they know what works or doesn't work in this race. And yesterday it was evenly split. Out of the 21 finishers, 10 did 3 stops, 11 did 2. So traditionally, the leader is the one that's going to be that 2-stop strategy on the left-hand side, going longer, stopping later. That's what Scott Dixon used. But the second place finisher, Ryan Hunter-Reay, did the 3-stop strategy, came in early, got rid of those red sidewall Firestones because they don't last quite as long. It takes you kind of out of the mix. You have to hope you have some clear running. That worked for Ryan Hunter-Reay. Again, evenly split between the field, but I think what they've learned, if you want to win, it's a 2-stopper. If you're gambling, it's 3. Rick?
Oh, we're here with Piers Phillips, who is the strategist for Robert Wickens. All right, Jan Beekes was just talking about the debate between do you do 2 stops, do you do 3 if you're a gambler. What did you learn yesterday? And, without telling us too much, what's your plan?
I'm not going to tell you anything. I think you looked at it yesterday, 2 stops won the race. Obviously, there's a lot of guys struggled with 3 tyres, etc. And, that obviously makes a big difference. So we'll just got to see how it plays out, to be honest. Try and get a clean start, stay out of trouble, get our heads down and see where the car is after a few laps.
All right, now Robert is starting next to the guy, Alexander Rossi. They had a minor incident with at the very first race. Has there been any discussion about the fact that those two are starting next to each other going into this first turn?
No, both of them are hard chargers. They get on really well. They're good friends out the car as well. So we just need to be clean, look after each other, be there at the end.
All right, Piers Phillips is the strategist for Robert Wickens, a rookie who's starting up front. Alan?
All right, Rick, thanks. You saw the backup pace car being brought out with the regular pace car driver, Oriol Servia, behind the wheel. So again, each of these cars that are stopped on the racetrack will be refired, driven around to the pit lane, and the grid reformed, and then we'll start the process again with the 2 pace laps and the green flag. So a halt to the proceedings, shy of the green flag. And you've not missed a thing in the Detroit Grand Prix. Well, actually, you might have missed a lot if you just joined us. Back after this from your ABC station. Marco Andretti roaring away as they continue to refire the cars and send them around to the pit lane to reform and restart this Detroit Grand Prix. Just after the cars rolled from the pit lane onto the racetrack at the beginning of the pace lap, the pace car with a celebrity pace car driver in it hit this bump in turn 2 that's difficult for the drivers and hit the wall. All of the racers, except for Alexander Rossi, stopping behind the accident scene. Rossi able to avoid, but everyone stopped there and shut the engines down. Everybody okay in that pace car, but again, the race stopped and the field will have to be reformed. The backup pace car has been brought out with Oriol Servia. And while we get the cars fired up and sent back around, let's check back in with Rick DeBrule.
Yeah, here with Roger Penske, who's the strategist for the highest starting Chevrolet, that is Will Power. All right, let's talk about what you learned yesterday and how it's going to help you today. What did you learn?
Well, we learned the Hondas have some real good torque around the track, but I think qualifying today, Will's up in number 3 and Pagenaud in 8th. I think we've got a good chance. It's going to be, do you make 2 stops? Do you make 3? And again, it depends on yellows. I see we got one right at the beginning of the race here, so you never know what's going to happen. I've got the governor here with me from the state of Michigan who's going to be my strategist today.
It's always important to bring in somebody a little bit higher up. Now, I have to ask, you've been to just a few more races than I have. Have you ever seen the pace car wreck on the lead lap?
Well, the governor asked me that a little bit ago, and I said, we've seen, I think the leader at Indianapolis spin on the pace lap. I think one of our guys, Kogan, spun on coming down the front straightaway. So, this isn't quite as bad as spinning when you got your race car up in front, but it's too bad. But again, come to the races, you'll see anything.
Indeed we have. All right. Thanks a lot, Roger Penske. Jan?
And watching carefully the replays was, of course, here the Alexander Rossi pit and Rob Edwards, because you're the only car that actually went through potentially some debris. Have you been able to look at the car and see if you're okay?
We haven't been able to yet. IndyCar want to get all the cars back to pit lane before they'll let us check the tires and so on. That's obviously our biggest concern, right? Everyone else was far enough back that they could stop and not drive through. Alex thinks he avoided most of it, but obviously we won't know until we have the opportunity to check the car.
I assume that if there was a cut tire or something that you could demonstrate to IndyCar, they would allow you to change that.
I would hope the same thing. I'm hoping we don't have a cut tire. That's the best option.
For looking for the race itself, strategy-wise, have you predetermined what you're going to do, or you want to see how it shakes out after green?
We have a reasonable idea based on obviously what happened yesterday and based on historically what's happened. But every race is a little different when the yellows fall, what difference cars' pace is on the reds or the blacks. So we have a plan A, but we maybe have plan B and plan C if needed.
All right, thank you, Rob. And of course, these kind of races, anything can happen, as we just saw.
Yeah, they sure can, and we have just seen a very unusual occurrence for sure. So Alexander Rossi drove back around to the pit lane. That's why instead of pulling cars backwards onto the pit lane, they fired everyone else up and sent them around the racetrack because Rossi used some fuel. So others, in driving back around to the pit lane, these strategists always thinking, right? We just heard from Pierce Phillips, the Wicked strategist. Well, listen to Hinch as he's coming back around to the pit lane.
All right, they're asking you to maintain pace car speed. Micah, let's go gray 8. Thank you. And we'll go down pit lane and the pass lane and stop in order they come in.
So some information there from the team telling him to go to gray 8. That's the knob on his steering wheel, certainly to save some fuel. But listen to what he does here. Drives along, clutches the car. Once you get onto the backstretch here,
he's doing everything he can to not use any fuel.
Smooth on the throttle. And then we noticed this when we were away in break, and we're coming up to a turn here now down the long backstretch. You can hear it idling right now. Accelerate. Clutch. Car is coasting right now, using no fuel. That little bit of fuel saved might just be enough to actually get you another lap or so, or these guys do it all throughout the race, just maybe that last couple of turns where you may not run out of fuel on the very last stop. Those sorts of thinking might just help it.
Only car that hasn't fired is Rene Binder's, the 32 car. You see it's been attached to the tow strap and is being brought back around that way. So, waiting for the race to start here at Detroit. It's been eventful, and we haven't even gotten to the green flag. While the Coast Guard plows down the river, let's check who's making things happen down on pit road. Rick?
We're here with Taylor Kyle, who is the strategist for James Hinchcliffe. And yesterday, Hinch didn't finish that well, but we were talking about whether he made big changes, and he said it really wasn't the car's fault, and Hinch said that.
Yeah, no, the car was okay for him yesterday. He had a pit exit violation, which was a bummer. I think we were in a pretty good place for yesterday. So overnight, we really didn't do much. I mean, the car is okay. He's happy with it. He knows what he's got. So we're just looking forward to getting this thing going.
All right, you guys qualified in the wet, so you didn't get a chance to learn anything. How hard is it to have yesterday's race, then come back today and just hope that the car is just exactly the way you want it?
It's hard. We're all kind of rolling the dice here. Nobody really knows what today's going to be like, but we look back at yesterday and just try to make the best decision we can based on what we've got.
And now they just have to wait for the cars to start. Jan?
And you talk about not knowing what this day might have or might unfold. Mike Hull, of course, makes those calls for Scott Dixon. You've seen just about everything. Scott said that he thought he had a pole lap, but you ended up 5th. Now starting 5th, from what you learned yesterday, how do you play today's race?
Well, hopefully it starts soon. I think it's so hard to know. Every race, every day is a new day. Yesterday there was only one car that made a 3-stop strategy truly work. Even with that, it was tough for Hunter Ray to do what he did. I admire what he did there, actually, considering he found a lot of traffic trying to do it. But there's more people at the back today that are fast cars. I think you'll see more 3-stoppers today than you saw yesterday who have merit. So we're going to really have to watch that. The whole idea is to get out front and run clean laps and try to maintain that 22-second gap that you need when you do your stop so you can still come out in front of those people. So we're going to try to do that. Unless we get really wedged early in the race, we'll probably stick to that, and hopefully it's 2 stops for us today.
All right, and they won the race yesterday, exercising some of that patience. Rick?
Well, here with Ed Carpenter, who this week is not racing because it's a road course, and he hands the car over to Jordan King. But, you know, just last week, this guy was finishing 2nd at Indy. Have you thought a lot about that race in terms of could you have done something differently? Is it a great finish? What's going through your mind after that finish?
I mean, you know, your first emotion that it's a little disappointing to be that close to winning the Indy 500, but you know, that's where I really started to feel better is the team did a great job, the whole Fuzzy's Vodka crew. You know, they executed. We had great pit stops, and there really wasn't much that that I could have done different or that we could have done differently. So, I think as a group, we should be proud of the whole month of May that we had and thankful and, know that we put in a performance that I think some years would have been capable of winning the 500, and we'll come back again next year and try to do it again.
All right, how hard is it to be in a race where you're finishing second at the peak of your game and then the following week sitting on the strategy stand?
I mean, it's different, but I've been in this role since 2014, so it's kind of the cadence and rhythm that I'm used to, but definitely looking forward to Saturday night at Texas Motor Speedway and getting back in and trying to get a little redemption and go take it to Will and the rest of Team Penske and everyone else for that matter.
All right, Ed Carpenter once again strategist this week, second place last week. Alan?
All right, Rick, thanks. So all the cars have been brought back to pit road. They've been repositioned in their roll-off order, and now the crews were just given the okay to go out and examine the tires. You see everybody looking, making sure they didn't pick up a puncture, running through some of the debris. We should get the command to start engines again shortly. Crews scurrying about at the Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel, yet to get going for this second half of the two-day doubleheader. As the field exited the pit lane for the beginning of the first pace lap, the pace car, driven by a celebrity pace car driver, hit a very difficult hump in turn 2, and the car got away and hit the wall, scattering debris on the racetrack in front of the field. Fortunately, both the occupants of that pace car were okay and did climb from the machine, but that's where the field stopped, and we've been sitting ever since waiting for the green flag in this one. Crews continuing to examine their cars, and IndyCar officials beginning to reorganize the restart. Let's check with Jan.
And they are getting direction from IndyCar. Rico Nault on the radio with Graham Rahal. There's been communications. They're allowing you to check the tires carefully because of debris, and what's your situation?
Well, we're looking okay. The United Reynolds Honda's in good shape. We expect to go back out here in a few minutes. The tires look good. Just looking forward to starting this race.
Now, unfortunately, you were here till 1 o'clock in the morning, the entire team. You had to switch to the backup car after that big crash yesterday. You feel like with this backup car, you have it where you want it?
Yeah, actually, we went out and qualified it. We didn't quite get up to the pole like we wanted, but the car's strong. He feels comfortable in it. The should be a good race for us today. I'm pretty confident. The guys did a great job working all night, like you said. The United Reynolds crew is just, they're phenomenal. They've been working their tails off, but they're making it happen.
That's definitely tough duty after the month of May Indy 500. Rick?
Well, Jan, the crews have been out there looking at the cars very carefully. There you see Robert Wicken's car. Just a moment ago, they were taking the rear tire and they were rolling it, and they actually have a spray bottle with some liquid in it, and they were spraying it on one of the rear tires. And the concern was, is there any air coming out of that? Was it causing it to bubble up? You can see a little residual of the liquid on the tire right there. And the good news is that while they thought they saw something, as a result of spraying that liquid, they're not seeing any air coming out of it. They finally seemed satisfied, stopped doing it, and walked away. But that's one of the concerns. While they were out on the track, when they had to go by whatever potential small piece of debris was out there, did they pick up anything in the tires? But once again, while they were looking very closely at that, they seemed satisfied with what they saw after spraying the liquid on it, didn't see any bubbling coming up, so they're going to go ahead and let them go.
All right, Rick, thanks. So the backup pace car that was brought out needs a transponder affixed to it. That's what's being done now, and you see Rene Binder's car is being pushed back to the Juncos Racing pit, which is the last one at the far end of pit road. His car did not refire on the racetrack when everyone else was started up, so some problems also before the green flag for the 32. Back for the start after a word from your ABC station. Getting ready to attempt to start the Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Steel, a second time here at the raceway at Belle Isle after the pace car accident on the outlap from the initial attempt to start the race. You can only imagine that the social media channels are having a good bit of fun at the moment.
I know my phone's actually been blowing up over here. It's actually some of the stuff is funny. So
yeah, boy.
The most important thing that nobody is injured.
Yes,
and a little embarrassment, no doubt, but.
And in his defense, I would say that was the most difficult corner on the track.
And just a super car, the new Corvette. I think it's capable of 212 miles an hour. I mean, it is an awesome car.
How many horsepower? How many horsepower? 700, over 700?
So when you put your foot on the gas, you got instant tire spin.
Well, Oriol Servia back behind the wheel now, the official pace car driver. They have already started the 3-minute countdown to the refiring of engines. Then we'll get the parade and the pace lap and then the green flag to restart this race. I'm going to check. I thought I just heard a penalty called out. It was at the 32 car for Rene Binder for working on the car under the red flag. So they'll have a 2-lap penalty before the race even starts as they continue to try and figure out why that 32 car wouldn't refire on the racetrack when all the other cars did. So 2 minutes away from the start of this. Rick?
Well, let's talk about Robert Wickens. Robert Wickens has had quite a year. In fact, it's a year that any rookie would dream about having. I mean, think about this. He started on the pole for his very first race. He finished second in the next one. And then he's had 3 top 5 finishes. Now, that would be great for any rookie except Robert Wickens. He's 29 years old. He's got a lot more experience. He's been racing in a lot of other series. And today, he's starting on the outside of the front row, but even that's not enough. The other 5 rookies here, they're going to be content with a good finish. Robert Wickens, he only wants one thing, and that's a victory.
And he's going to get one before this season is out for Sam Schmidt, the team owner. I have no doubt about that, the way that this guy has performed right from the very opening race of the season in St. Petersburg.
And it doesn't have to be in a road race like this. He's been very competitive even on ovals.
And that's the thing that amazed me. I mean, you came over from Europe and running Formula One, all road courses and street courses, as he's done in the touring car series over there, and he comes over here and looks very comfortable in an oval.
And he's done very well when you compare him to his teammate, Hinchcliffe, who is no slouch. But Hinchcliffe has had a bad season this year, and he is what Hinchcliffe has not done, he has managed to do on the track.
Well, and it's interesting what Rick was saying. And when I spoke to Robert just yesterday, we were talking about, I said to him, how would you feel about Indianapolis? Fellow Canadian, wanted to catch up with him. And he said, I was okay with it, disappointed because he expected more. And then I talked to him about this race here, and he is not happy, as Rick says, unless he's actually going to be up front on the podium every race. He expects that out of himself.
All right, down trackside now. They're about to give the signal to the teams to restart the engines. And the signal has just been called out on IndyCar radio, so they'll start them up again. "34 minutes, the delay. And now they'll do the parade pace lap again and then try for the green flag and hopefully get this thing going finally. It's a funny thing because you heard it from some of the teams and so on. Can we finally start, right? The late afternoon start for the race. Everybody's been ready to go. Let's go already.
And as a driver, if you're driving and you're racing, you don't feel the aches and pains in your body or the heat that's in the car. But when you get out there and now you have to sit in the car itself, waiting to get restarted, all that heat sink that's going through the car, you're just sitting there sweating, you're getting overheated, Eddie, before you even get a chance to get going.
Yeah, but the closer they get to the start of this race, the adrenaline is going to start pumping and their focus will become laser sharp. And this is a tough race.
For sure, will be. Onboard views for today's race. Marco Andretti, pole sitter yesterday, starts 12th today with an AutoNation on board. Ryan Hunter-Reay, AutoNation on board. Remember, he had a little problem in qualifying. He starts 10th. Graham Rahal with the United Rentals on board. This is the backup car after the crash in yesterday's race when he was performing so well. And Zach Veach with his best qualifying spot yet in the Verizon IndyCar Series. He's got the relay on board, and the youngster from Ohio starting in 7th position. James Hinchcliffe with our Lucas Oil on board from 6th on the grid. Ed Jones had a solid day yesterday, a solid qualifying this morning. He starts in 4th position with the NTT data on board. Will Power, the Indianapolis 500 winner, has the Verizon on board from 3rd on the grid. And the previously discussed Robert Wickens with a Verizon on board from 2nd position on the grid. Brandon Cleve, his outside front tire changer, will carry our over-the-wall camera again today, watching the cars approach him at 50 miles an hour on the pit lane for the stops. And the pole sitter, Alexander Rossi, has an AutoNation onboard camera. Rossi looking to see if he can get his 2nd win of the season and extend his championship lead. So, Jan, all of this delay and the extra pace lap that everybody ran changed the strategy any of the fuel?
As far as the teams have been told, that first lap, that pace lap, never happened. So therefore, this is a complete fresh restart. So they have all the fuel that they would have started the race, minus just essentially one pace lap. They say that's just a smidgen of fuel. We saw the way that James Hinchcliffe went around and clutched the car. So strategy-wise, it only makes a very small difference.
All right, Jan, thanks.
Interesting when you're going through the onboards, Alan. It was interesting to see how many people were even clutching the car during that lap.
Sure.
So much fuel conservation going on here. That's all the drivers think about sometimes.
It's like nobody wants to lock into a strategy yet. They want to see how their tires are going to go before they make that decision.
Well, we talk about reds, and the reds did last a little longer yesterday than I think a lot of people anticipated they would. But don't forget, it's getting a little warmer out here today, guys. Track temperature is going to rise, so maybe those tires will fall off a little sooner. Guys will want to get off of those and get back onto the primary tires.
And we had a big rainstorm that cleared off a lot of that rubber that was on the track, so the track is pretty green right now.
A lot to deal with.
Yep.
For these drivers as they come to the green flag. They will gather the field up behind the pace car. Alexander Rossi, Robert Rickens will have the front row. Will get to go green flag racing after a 34-minute delay. Just tuning in because you saw it on the social media or something. The pace car crashed with a celebrity pace car driver behind the wheel exiting pit road. Everybody was okay, but the delay to clean up the mess, get the cars back to the grid, reorganize the grid, give the teams a chance to make sure there were no tire punctures or things like that from running through the debris field. And now we're going to finally get this race started with a second attempt, hopefully a clean start, and we can get racing for good.
We'll see who did their homework best.
And you see everybody warming their tires up because they want to get as much temperature in as possible as they're weaving back and forth. They want to get a good start, yes, but a run through turns 1 and 2 to get that run going down to 3. Because as you always say, Eddie, at the start and at restarts, it's the best time to pass people because they're all packed up together.
But you sure can make mistakes very quickly here.
Here they come, round 8 of the Verizon IndyCar Series, set to go, the Detroit Grand Prix. It's Rossi and Wickens on the front row coming to the green flag.
Green, green, green.
Ed Jones with a defensive line. Will Power still got inside of him. Forced Hinchcliffe out wide in 3.
That was some side-by-side racing that started back in turns 1 and 2. Ed Jones did a nice job defending there, but couldn't make it stick.
But he only lost 1.
Now he's had a hiccup coming out of that corner. Had a hiccup. There goes Dixon by him. There goes Hinchcliffe by. Ed Jones losing 3 spots, and Spencer Pigot has spun, and his car has stalled. That is at the exit of turn 5. And a full course yellow for where that car sits on the course.
Eddie, I think everybody's a little antsy from sitting in the cars getting ready to go. There's a lot of hip checking going on.
That 34 minutes has made a difference.
So Spencer Pigot with a turnaround here off of turn number 5.
Yeah, now we didn't see enough early in that photo whether or not he actually got tagged from behind, but the car was going around.
Sebastian Bourdais, flat left rear.
And lucky for him, it's under a yellow right now, so he can get into pit lane and get that repaired. If it was still under green, that would be more costly.
Well, we know he'll be going to a 3-stop strategy.
That's the first car to commit to that.
Don't worry about the fuel right now. We're going to have to come back in. Don't worry about the fuel right now.
Yeah, so they'll get a chance to repair that one tire because it's flat.
The closed pit road. So
Correct.
he'll enter the closed pit road. He'll make the necessary repairs.
It's fine. We're just going to do all 4.
And then they'll catch back up to the field and then come back in. Spencer Pigot fired up.
Yeah, Sebastian Bourdais, the left rear was the problem. They're concerned about the nose as well, but the thought is that they're going to go ahead and change the 4 tires, and they were potentially going to come in on the next lap and change the wing. But now, as they're looking at it, they're not quite sure. So we'll get a final word in a moment, but right now it doesn't look like they're going to be changing that front wing.
Well, again, because the pit road is closed, the necessary service performed there. Change the tires, send him out, and now they'll come back around. And if they want to do anything further, they'll have to come back in to do it then. You heard Craig Hampson telling him, don't worry about the fuel. So, another delay in getting this race really going. Although those first five corners were very interesting, weren't they?
I'm still trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some of the drivers are too.
So how did he spin? Did somebody hit him? Was it Bourdais, do you think, that hit him?
I'm not sure. We haven't seen that because when we saw it on the screen, he was already going around, so we don't know really if he got tagged from behind or just put the power down, the back end came around.
But he didn't touch anything, so he should be fine.
His pride's probably a little hurt.
Now he's got ample time to rectify that.
And I can tell you that Spencer Pigot said on the radio, "What an idiot." Now, so he thinks...
Was he talking about himself or somebody hit him?
He thinks he got hit, but that was his radio communication. He's coming onto pit lane now as the car is not driving straight. He obviously has some suspension damage at the rear, but at least for radio, he thinks he got hit.
All right, Jan. Ferrucci in, Kimball, and others. You'll see it in side by side. Getting ready for a restart here in the Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel. By the way, the stewards are reviewing an incident between Spencer Pigot and Santino Ferrucci. So that is who the other driver involved was, that Spencer Pigot was rather frustrated with. We'll let you know what happens when they make their decision. So Alexander Rossi, Robert Wickens, Will Power, Scott Dixon, and James Hinchcliffe, your top five. Here's another quick look at the incident. Left of the screen.
Oh, he's already sideways when he comes into view.
Yep.
And the next car in line is Santino Ferrucci in that white, blue, and pink striped car. So you see how jammed up everybody is behind them.
Yeah.
All right, Spencer Pigot still on pit road. Jan reports he had a suspension part that'll have to be replaced. Bent in that contact. And Alexander Rossi will begin to accelerate. We'll come to a restart and a green flag.
Zach Veach making some nice moves. Alexander Rossi always gets a good restart, doesn't he?
He started really early.
Mateus laced, trying to make some hay. Getting around Jordan King. No action taken by the stewards in that incident between the 21 and the 19.
So it becomes what they call a racing incident, but unfortunately the loser on that program is Spencer Pigot.
Look at the gap that Rossi has on Wickens.
Looking inside, that's Marco Andretti trying to find a way around his younger teammate, Zach Veach.
As the cars come out of the turn, you can see how rough the racetrack is. We talked about how bumpy a street circuit is here at Belle Isle, going over the concrete patches. Winters are not so favorable for this track here at Belle Isle, obviously. A lot of bumps, manhole covers. It's one of the roughest ones that these drivers will run on all year long.
Oh, look at this. Hunter Ray inside of Pagano. Wow, what a move.
He was going to make that
He wasn't going, no, it was not going to be an option.
That was for 10th place.
All right, Hunter Ray, I got places to go. And
Get out of my way. He had a great race yesterday, just wasn't quick enough to catch Dixon.
Gave it all he had at the end.
Yes, he did.
Just couldn't quite get up there.
You can see the admiration that Mike Hall from Ganassi had when he was interviewed, saying that Ryan Hunter Ray did a wonderful job on a 3-stop pit stop strategy yesterday, getting the car up there.
Tell you what, Marco Andretti looks anxious to clear his younger teammate here, doesn't he? Marco in that pink, black, and white 98 car.
Just watch the wheels go up and down here. Shows you how bumpy this circuit is, and the drivers are feeling that sitting in the cockpit.
I don't think Marco's state of hurriedness will be lessened any by now seeing Hunter Ray in his mirrors.
Yes.
And with these new cars this year, guys, there's about 1,000 pounds less downforce. That's less grip on the road. So when you go through fast sections like we're going through here now, turns 1 and 2, last year they could stay a little closer and get a draft going down to turn 3 where they're headed, and sometimes make a slingshot move and do an out-braking maneuver into 3. But you can't keep close enough to the car in front this year. It's more difficult, drivers are telling me.
And it was not just more difficult here. We saw that also at Indianapolis. If you got in dirty air, there were a lot of cars that were spinning all by themselves. So it's put the driver back in control of the car and not the other way around.
Which was the object.
And it's worked. It's worked completely. It's obviously not as chaotic as it was the first race we had at St. Pete. The drivers are starting to figure out how to make them run. But this is a very hard circuit to get the cars to ride these bumps.
Got to run here, Marco Andretti. Is he going to have enough room under braking?
On the outside.
Oh. Nice move.
And he was on the push to pass. Remember, you got a little extra horsepower by pushing the button for push to pass. He was on that early, gave him that extra power to get by.
So Andretti up to 8th, Veach back to 9th, Hunter Ray in 10th.
Veach has another guy that doesn't mess around behind him.
Talking to Zach Veach, he's on a program here with Andretti Autosport for 3 years. He's told me numerous times that he just feels so blessed to be there with a guy like Michael Andretti running the team he can call upon, but also all the data he gets from all his teammates. He said it will teach my learning curve, and I'll probably increase my speed probably quicker than I would do if I was in a single car or a double car team.
He's driving the wheels off this. Hunter Ray is going to have a perfect execution to get by him, because he is not slowing down and giving anybody room that he doesn't have to. And that pass that Andretti did was picture book perfect.
It's 172 miles an hour going down the straightaway here into turn 3. Into 7.
Zach Veach with a little bump of the push to pass to try and make sure he kept his gap on Hunter Ray on that long straightaway. Rick?
Yeah, Zach Veach says this car that he's in this weekend is the best one he has had all season. In the first 2 practices, he was 8th and 10th. He loved the car. Didn't qualify it the way he wanted in the first race. Felt a lot better after the qualifying for the second one. But I would say that of all the races he's had so far this year, going into this one, he feels he's actually got something that's competitive. They can give him a roll in this race, and you see what it's actually doing right now. Jan?
And Ryan Hunter Ray, who of course is chasing Zach Veach, he's playing a bit of catch-up. As we documented early in the show, he had a couple of spins in qualifying this morning in wet conditions and lost his fastest laps, but now he's got to run. He's got a chance to go after his teammate.
On the push to pass, down to turn 3. Veach hangs it out there and holds him off.
But he was polite, left him room.
I don't know if I'd use the word polite, but he did leave him a little bit of room.
I remember that driving against you. There was never politeness coming out of you, was there?
This is not about politeness. This is about who wants it the most.
Couple of things. Renee Binder, after serving the 2-lap penalty for working on the car under the red flag, has rejoined the race. Spencer Pigot, after having the suspension piece changed, has rejoined the race. Binder 2 laps down, Pigot 3 laps down, and in last place at the moment.
Hunter Ray's going to have to get closer than this to Veach, or he's not going to get by him, and the cars that are ahead of them are going to slowly disappear.
But as we talked about, it's so tough because you get close and all of a sudden you start to lose grip with the car. The car starts to float on top of the road. You can't keep the speed up. So that allows the car ahead of you to just creep away in the turns.
And now Hunter Ray is under pressure from Simon Pagenaud. Look at the line that Simon is taking.
Pagenaud under pressure himself from Matthias Laced.
Both Hunter Ray and Pagenaud on the push to pass that lap. I just love to listen to the engines here, and with the paddle shifting the drivers have now, Eddie, it's so cool just to bang through the gearbox all the way through.
Those paddle shifters allow you to focus a lot more on just driving and not messing around with the gear lever.
Now, Laced was the only driver in the field that started on the primary tires. A little harder, won't be quite as quick off the get-go, but will hold their speed longer. That is the only car in the field that started on the primary tire. So he's trying to do what Graham Rahal tried to do yesterday, make as much hay as he can when the others begin to slide around before making his first pit stop.
And for a rookie, I think that's a good choice because you don't have to be worrying about using up your tires. You can go as hard as you want. It's very difficult to take a softer tire and stretch it out like that. Whereas right now, Lace can just drive it as hard as he wants because the tires will last longer.
And
Hunter Ray in the pits.
Now they're trying to get him out of traffic. He was caught there in line, trying to see if they could get him a clear spot on the racetrack to knock out some fast laps.
And this is a strategy they used yesterday. There's already been 2 other cars. That was Tony Kanaan and also Takuma Sato that came in the previous lap. So they're trying to quickly get this done. Rick, 6.1.
Yeah, James Hinchcliffe just came in and pitted, but this was not what they had planned to do. In fact, just a few moments ago, they had talked about wanting to do a 2-stop strategy, but they were concerned there was something wrong with the left front tire. At the last minute, they almost kept him out. They said, you're doing fast last times, but they decided they had to bring him in, and they did that.
Yeah, Rick, and on our picture right now, as we're looking backward from the cockpit of Hinch's car, there's something,
looks like safety
a
tape.
banner or safety tape or something kind of wrapped around that left rear suspension. I don't know if that would be affecting the car any, but it's certainly not something that you want to see there. All right, so Hinch, after the pit stops, waiting for everybody else to cycle around. Here comes Robert Wickens from second place onto the pit lane for a stop and headed all the way down toward Rick DeBrule.
Yeah, and they just came on the radio a little while ago and they asked him, can you hang on for another 10 laps so we can do a 2-stop strategy? And he said, no, I can't do that. So it's trying to get these tires. He just couldn't survive on those reds.
Well, this is the thing, as you heard from my call earlier. Hard to make it go from a 3-stopper here, but see how the day plays out, where the caution flags fall and the like. If a caution comes out now before Rossi makes a pit stop, then that might work out for Wickens. Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steele from the raceway at Belle Isle Park in Detroit, Michigan. Scott Dixon 9, Graham Rahal 15, racing for a 4th and 5th rather. Reminder that following today's action on the streets of Belle Isle Park, Verizon IndyCar Series heads to Texas Motor Speedway for the 1.5-mile oval. That's next Saturday at 8 Eastern on NBCSN. A lot of folks talking about what we might see in that race here this weekend after what we saw at Indianapolis and, of course, the big High Bank Texas Motor Speedway. So Alexander Rossi has led every lap so far, continuing to knock out some pretty stout laps. He's out in front by 5.8 seconds on Will Power.
Front is starting to go. Copy that. +6 on power, 12 complete. Need to try and do 10 more here.
So when he says front starting to go, the front tires are starting to go off on him. That means he doesn't have the grip turning into the turn itself, and it's going to continue to get worse, Jan.
Yes, and of course that radio communication you heard at the very end, and that was a couple of laps ago. He says we need 10 more. In other words, he needs to try to keep these red sidewall Firestones, and that's what Alexander Rossi told me. The fronts start to grain, as it's called. In other words, when they slide too much, they start to lose significant grip. They need him to do about 7 more laps to get him in the window. Rob Edwards looking on to do a 2-stop strategy.
What was important with that radio communication is he did not respond. In other words, he's saying, I can do it. I can get those laps out.
Our Steel telemetry on board with Alexander Rossi.
Been much discussion here about the Chevy and the Honda Power. Honda we're on board with right now. They say it's very drivable, very tractable. You can see he puts his foot on the gas. Good power down, good torque, and they get out of the turns. This engine is said to be better on a street circuit, but on the Indy Grand Prix, on the sweeping permanent road course that they had at Indianapolis, the Chevy certainly showed its legs there and certainly did a better job.
So he complained about having front tires that are degrading, and yet he's added, no, he's about the same. He's made the same distance with Power, who's following in second place. He's 5.7 seconds ahead of him.
There's Ed Jones in third. Riding with Will Power, and a reminder to download IndyCar Mobile to access exclusive live in-car cameras, hear driver and pit crew chatter, and more, only on Verizon.
This will be up to 170, 72 miles an hour, this run going to turn 7.
Sebastian Bourdais with a look inside on Matheus Leist. Now chasing Marco Andretti. Bourdais picking up track position. Remember, had the flat tire early, came in, got off the reds, got onto the black tires, started at the back of the field as others have peeled off and pitted, and he's passed some cars, chipping his way toward the front, right now showing in 7th.
A confident Bourdais is almost impossible to stop when he's trying to pass you.
How about Bourdais, Rick?
Yeah, let's talk about what a miserable day he had yesterday. He was not happy with the car at all. And I was talking with his engineer, Craig Hampson, as we see him go past right there. I was talking with his engineer, Craig Hampson. I said, how many changes did you make? He says, we blew the car up. We turned it upside down, we shook everything out, and we started all over again. So they've given him essentially a totally different car. Now, the problem was, because the qualifying session was in the wet, they really didn't know if it was going to work. I'd say right now they've got a good clue.
The one thing that Scott just pointed out is that Bourdais is the only car they can stick behind a car in 1 and 2, where it's very aerodynamically difficult to do in dirty air. That's why he's getting by everybody so easily.
That last pass, he did use a little bit of push to pass. Button on the steering wheel, again, that just gives you a little bit more power. Obviously, you're going to use a little bit more fuel, but he's trying to march his way to the front, as you mentioned.
Let's see what he does here. He's right on Rahal.
He gets out of the
look
turn
how close
so
he
well.
can. Look how close he can run. He's the only car that can run that close. This is Rahal's least favorite corner coming up.
Somebody had his difficulties in yesterday. Bourdais with a look.
What I like about Graham is that there's no stories. He said he made a mistake and ended up hitting the wall. That's a nice thing about him. He gets out of it and doesn't make any sugarcoating where something happened to the car, so takes responsibility, which you need to do because the guys in the crew work back till 1 o'clock in the morning to try to get the car repaired.
Right now he has his mirrors full of Bourdais. And he's definitely a fighter.
Pretty noticeable paint job to have in your mirrors.
Yes, it's like a big bumblebee.
No mistaking that somebody's right there.
Let's see what happens in the straightaway.
Now, straight,
both on push to pass.
Yep, straight that's not straight, and a hard turn because you're under braking as you're turning the car. So, as I always say, your foot acts as an ABS switch because you can't really tromp on the brake really hard. You'll lock the wheels up as the car starts to unload. So you have to be very cautious on the pedal pressure.
This is where he's got to get close. Another really tricky right-hander coming up. He's got to close this gap here.
Just 2 turns previous to, though, he turned in a little early. Looks like he caught the curb a little bit on the right-hand side, and Rahal ended up getting a bit of a space there.
This is the fastest section, right through here.
115 miles an hour in the entry, 120 as you're making a left-hand turn over the hump, which is where you saw the pace car crash earlier. The car gets airborne. You have to time it correctly.
See Dixon under braking there, kind of shimmying back and forth the car like a 4-wheel slide for a minute.
Yeah, it tells you your tires are on their way out and not enough grip.
So 4th place, 5th place, and 6th place. Dixon, orange and blue 9. Rahal, red, white, and blue 15. Bourdais, the Bumblebee 18. Is that what you called it? Bumblebee? I'm not taking responsibility for that line. That's all you.
Look how close they're running.
I do like the liveries this year. I mean, like you mentioned, the number 9, the PNC Bank machine for Dixon, certainly stands out.
He's lining him up again.
Meantime, they're starting to stack up behind them, too.
Graham just got enough. He might be able to defend going into one.
You know, it's interesting because the last couple of laps, Rossi and Power are doing mid-118s, Jones even mid-18s. Starting with Dixon, that whole group there is about 119, so about a half a second slower on Dixon backwards.
Leader Alexander Rossi yet to make his first pit stop. Back after this message and a word from your ABC station. Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel. Watching them mix it up here inside of the top 5. That's Robert Wickens and Ryan Hunter-Reay going at it here. Earlier, we saw Scott Dixon make a pit stop. Now Graham Rahal and Santino Ferrucci are in, Jan.
And yes, you can see that Graham Rahal is taking the opportunity to try and get himself out of traffic and get those new tires. We see that Marco Andretti is also due here on pit road any moment, while we also see they're setting up for the leader, Alexander Rossi. So all the moves being made now. While we were away, we should note that Scott Dixon did come in early, so he's on a much different strategy than yesterday, where he went longer. Look out!
Trouble! At the exit of pit road, it's Santino Ferrucci has spun at an extremely high speed part of the racetrack.
All he's thinking about is get out of the way.
And the front wing under that car will scatter debris.
That could have been much worse.
Rossi on pit road. As is Will Power, as is Ed Jones. Everybody trying to get in case the course goes caution.
Yes, and I'll have to say, he dodged a major bullet. I am quite surprised they did not go to a full course caution, but that would have definitely been a race killer for Alexander Rossi. But you can see that was a quick stop for him, and Will Power getting service as well, Rick.
Will Power at the very other end of pit road. Nice clean stop. They've had very little conversation other than Roger Penske keeping him apprised of what has to happen with regards to the fuel strategy. He hasn't talked about the car. As you can see, they didn't make any adjustments on it. Nice clean stop, and he's out.
Now, what happened to Santino Ferrucci exiting the pits?
Whoa. Very lucky, Eddie, as you mentioned, that he didn't get collected.
Gabby Chavez was the car coming at him at full speed, along with Marco Andretti that saw him and avoided.
He was very lucky that Gabby was paying attention.
Gabby, a brilliant young driver, and that you know,
very
that's
quick,
very quick, and just a reaction time. You don't get a chance to think about that.
The biggest surprise today is how fast Will Power's going. That Chevy, they've got something. They've made some changes overnight, and it has definitely made a difference. He and Rossi were running very similar speeds.
Scott Dixon and Sebastian Bourdais. This is 9th and 10th place as things have shaken out. Max Chilton was the leader. He's just given it up to come to pit road. Robert Wickens now goes back into the lead with Ryan Hunter-Reay 0.3 of a second behind him in second.
Rossi back up to third.
Dixon on the push to pass, and Sebastian Bourdais in the seal mask car that you see right there was actually pushing his button also in defense to try and make sure that Dixon did not get around.
So now the three stoppers like Wickens and Hunter-Reay and Kanaan and Pagenaud. When will they be on the pit lane for their next service? Robert Wickens now the race leader. Hunter-Reay right behind him in second. Then 5.7 seconds to Alexander Rossi, who's in third.
And we've only done 23 laps, Alan.
It's been eventful. I agree with Jan, by the way. I was kind of surprised not to see the full course yellow there, but that would have completely changed Alexander Rossi's day had he not pitted yet when the pit road was closed. So very, very fortunate for them to not have been caught by that yellow.
I think they were right to not call a yellow. I think it's always good when you can keep the race green.
And I think the fact that the car was still running was probably the reason they hesitated on doing a full course yellow. But once the car stalls at any given time, we've seen throughout the year that a full course yellow comes out immediately.
But that would have taken Rossi out of the race.
Well, at this particular time, but
yeah, but it just changes the complexion of the race.
For sure.
Timing's everything. Some days you're lucky, some days you're not.
Yep. If it works out for him today, he should go buy a lottery ticket today, shouldn't he?
But when you can avoid a yellow, I think you always should.
As we continuously watch these cars go around here, just that pounding, and I know we keep talking about that, but Eddie, as you know, I talked about on the drive in this morning, you know, we did one race, our palms were all sort of ripped apart by the steering wheel and the gear lever at that point in time, but your body ached from head to toe, and these guys are back again doing it.
The hardest thing of all for me when you do a race where you're exhausted before is that you can't keep that mental focus that you need because you're always thinking about your sore hands or your sore back. But these guys are in such better shape than we used to be because everything has evolved. The racing drivers just have more training and they have more experience, and there's a specific athletic training that they do for this, and you can tell by their performance. The same thing in Formula One, the same thing in sports car racing.
Right. You know, we used to use dumbbells and things like that. These guys sit in facilities now that have training machines with steering wheels with weights on them.
Heart monitors and doctors measuring the amount of oxygen in their blood. And you have to look for every 10th of a second in any sport that you're in right now. And these race car drivers do a lot more training than they used to be.
Yeah, we talk about the place in Indianapolis where most of the drivers go to called Pit Fit, and I've been in there quite a few times. I'm not training.
What were you doing?
Yeah,
in
that's
Pit
why I
Fit?
said I'm not training, but forget it. It's a pretty neat facility.
Spencer Pigot's team will retire his car from the race. Remember, it was 3 laps down earlier after it got turned around back on lap number 1, and they repaired it. He continued, but now he is going to be done for the day.
Can't go that fast doing that number, so just going to do the number.
You can't pass them. That's what you need to do. If you can pass them, you got clean track ahead, and we can really make up some ground. But if you can't, you got to hit the number.
Back to your fuel thing again, Alan.
The dilemma for a driver. Jan?
And of course, the dynamic here is that if you cannot pass, you have to be on a different strategy than if you can. So it kind of is in Ryan Hunter-Reay's design here. If he can figure out a way to go by, he can then change his strategy and doesn't have to hit a fuel number. So that is exactly what you have to do as a strategist. You have to leave it in the driver's hands. And we'll give you 1 or 2 laps to get by him, and if not, he's going to have to go into fuel mode to get in a different strategy. Rick?
Well, and just a few moments ago, the strategist for Robert Wickens, Pierce Phillips, came on the radio and said, "You're good on fuel, just keep going." And they told him, "You have more push to pass than Ryan Hunter-Reay behind him." So in other words, they were giving him the go-ahead to use the push to pass. Now, are they going to keep him, allowing him to run that wide open fuel the whole way? Hard to say, but for right now, they know their main job is to stay ahead of Ryan.
Well, Wickens pitted at lap 11. Hunter-Reay pitted at lap 10. Alexander Rossi running third on a 2-stop strategy, pitted at lap 22. Wickens and Hunter-Reay 4.5 seconds ahead of Rossi. Canon, Pagenaud are 4th and 5th. And we're approaching midway in this Detroit Grand Prix. Robert Wickens on pit road from the lead.
Yeah, just a moment ago they had a discussion about how much longer to stay out. They said he could go as many as 6 laps, and then they decided to bring him in right away. They made a wing adjustment, a tire pressure adjustment, and they sent him back out.
Tell you why they made the decision to bring him in now in just a minute. First, as you look at Wickens exit the pit lane, a reminder to download IndyCar Mobile for exclusive live in-car cameras, hear driver and pit crew chatter, and more, only from Verizon. So Wickens was losing 1 second per lap to Alexander Rossi and the other 2 stoppers that were closing from behind. Remembering the 22-second gap to pit road? Okay, Rossi was going to get by you anyway, but Will Power and Ed Jones and Sebastian Bourdais and Scott Dixon were knocking a second a lap off of Wickens' gap there. So they had to come in, and Jan, they had to come in and make that now to keep from avoiding losing any more time to those 2 stoppers.
Exactly, and this is what Ryan Hunter-Reay was looking for. Remember, they said if you can get by...
3 more of these.
There you go. 3 more of these. That is, they're trying to get him to do qualifying style laps, to do what's known as the overcut. Pit later and pick up positions just like Scott Dixon did yesterday.
And he just went 1 second quicker than the lap he had done before. So he was being held up by Wickens.
Tony Kanaan on pit lane. There you see Rossi right behind Hunter Ray. And Rossi continuing to close. So even though he went a second faster than he did behind Wickens, Rossi still went faster yet than him. Now we talked about Alexander Rossi and the confidence, how together he and this team have been, the precision-like execution that they've had in most every race this year. His performance at Long Beach was just dominating.
And it hasn't stopped. Every event he goes to, he has more and more confidence, and that was very evident at the Indianapolis 500. He did some things on the outside of turn 1 and 2 that nobody even thought of, and he gets away with it.
Boldly going where no man had gone before.
Yeah, but you don't do that every day. You can do that every now and again and get away with it. But even here, he's doing the same sort of thing he did at Long Beach. He's just so confident of his car and his team and his engineer, and you can tell he's going to get better and better and better.
So Pagenaud, one of the 3 stoppers, pitting here from 3rd place. Tony Kanaan also just on the pit lane. Rick?
Yeah, Simon Pagenaud really not happy with the car yesterday. I was talking with his strategist, Kyle Moyer. I said, make many changes overnight? He said, yeah, I couldn't listen to what Simon was saying for another day. It was so bad yesterday because of the way it was set up. So hopefully they've got a little better car today, but as you can see, the results really aren't there.
It's been a struggle of a weekend for sure.
It's been a struggle of a year for him. He really hasn't been that comfortable anywhere, which is a surprise.
And the whole trick about getting around this track, because we talk about the bumps, is the springs and the shock absorber package that makes the driver comfortable about keeping his foot on the gas. I mean, there's so much time around this racetrack that the wheels are spent in the air. You're trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Hunter Ray just set fast lap of the race.
Watch the speed here.
This is the hardest section of the track. Oh, yeah.
Nice job. We're making some good gains now. Keep it going.
He's on a mission. And we're only on lap 32. We have 38 laps to go. These guys are driving like it's qualifying.
Have to.
Hear him working the throttle, touching the brakes. Just watch his helmet in the bottom of the screen there. Now watch on board on the left-hand side. Look at your body jostling around. That steering, remember, no power steering here, no power brakes, so you're feeling that through your wrists, your forearms, all the way up to the shoulders as you're going around here, being pounded each and every lap.
Jostling, is that the Canadian version of jostling?
I'm looking at Canada outside the window.
Is that another one of your words?
Just checking.
I've given you a larger vocabulary this year, haven't I?
I'm just relieved he's not waddling again or something.
Bottom overtake, bottom overtake.
The reason why he's getting the call to do the overtake, when he's out there doing the fastest laps at the moment of anyone, they're watching the gaps. At the moment, he has a huge gap. If he's going to pit, the tires are being rolled out. He's going to definitely leapfrog Wickens, but they're looking at the top 5. If he continues this pace, he possibly may drop back around the area of Dixon, Rahal, maybe even Bourdais. So they've made big hay by giving him clean air for Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Just set another fast lap of the race.
And when you're doing laps like this, your heart rate goes up and you are just huffing for
you
air.
Want any wing out. Faster.
We're getting a driving clinic right now because this is exactly how it's done. Just the corner of it. Got Rahal yesterday. Now he's got to slow down to 50.
Perfect.
50.
Here he is, Jan.
And you heard him call on the radio. He wants a half a turn out of front wing. They're going to go with a sticker set, a brand new set of Firestone Blacks. They're going to wait for all the fuel because of the strategy he's on. That's there. 8.8 seconds. That'll do the job. And again, he needs to see where he's going to slot in. They've been watching this gap carefully. There goes Dixon.
Now trying to get out ahead of and will Graham Rahal, who's there right behind him. So what a stint there by Ryan Hunter-Reay. Pounded out a couple of new fast laps of the race after he got out from behind Robert Wickens, but it shuffles him back to 6th in line on the 3-stop strategy. Rossi out in front for a second time in the race. He's led 23 of the 34 laps that have been completed so far. Halfway next time by here in Detroit. The Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel from the raceway at Belle Isle Park. Beautiful 900-acre state park in downtown Detroit. Once a year, some of the streets converted into a race course for the Verizon IndyCar Series. The next race is a permanent course. It's the high-speed mile-and-a-half oval at Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth. It is Saturday night at 8 o'clock on NBCSN.
One of my favorite tracks that we used to go to, the high banks of Texas. Speed, drafting, wheel to wheel.
Trevor Bourdais!
And he didn't hit anything.
Oh, and he didn't get hit too. Wow.
Try doing that again.
Wow. Sebastian Bourdais out of 5th place.
Next car
resumes in 8th.
You've got about 100, 150 feet.
Flat spots on the tires, you can see them.
What is going on with the car? All the tire pressures seem fine. If you have an issue, we can pit, but you will need to stop again. Well, I can't drive like that.
There's something wrong with that car.
Yeah, the right rear.
No, but he said the tire pressures are all fine. I think something happened.
Right, if you need to pit, we will have to put tires on and stop twice. Something is broken on the left rear.
Toe link or something like that.
Pit.
A driver of his caliber does not say something's wrong if it isn't.
Because it looked like it was going down the straight and trying to go like
it just
side saddle.
Spun so quickly.
Toe link, pit.
Again, we've avoided another yellow. Something's wrong there.
Well, somehow, safely around to the pit lane.
Here. It's not going to break straight. Take it easy coming in here.
Man. This will end up snapping, I'm sure. There it goes.
Yeah, you see that tire? The left rear tire just moved.
Like I said, toe link or something. So
look at Hunter-Reay, how close he came to the back of that car. Talk about being on automatic.
And that's the high-speed section,
watch Hunter-Reay. Watch Hunter-Reay.
Yeah.
And Graham Rahal there.
And who says?
Wickens there.
Yep.
Watch the left rear tire.
Yep. Look at the reflexes that Hunter-Reay had here to avoid it.
It's 120 miles an hour going through turn 1, turn 2. Very impressive.
It looks tricky in slow motion. Yeah, something snapped on that car.
How about it, Rick?
Well, they definitely have something that's broken on the back. With Cruz gone over the wall, gotten some parts, gone back to the car, and they're trying to replace it. At one point, Sebastian Bourdais was asking, are we going to keep running? And basically the answer to that is yes. He's staying in the car. They're trying to do the repair to, at the very least, get him back out. It was a bent toe link.
Man, what a tough break. Of course, Bourdais losing some ground at the Indianapolis 500 as well, with a tough late ending to that race, so sliding back in the championship. And now a tough day here on Sunday at Belle Isle.
And Rossi has an 11.6 seconds on power, which is the biggest surprise of the day for me.
There is Alexander Rossi, has led 28 of 39 laps. Started on pole, Set fast time in the wet qualifying session this morning. The dramatic drive at Indianapolis a week ago where he went from 32nd on the grid all the way up to 4th at the finish. And look at the gap he's got on Will Power. There is Will. 10.8 seconds back. Rossi.
That's another area code that's so far behind. But it's amazing, Scott, that it's Power. Chevy couldn't do anything yesterday. I don't know what they did to that engine last night, but it sure works on Power's car.
Well, I think also making some changes to the chassis because we heard that. Here comes Ed Jones.
Nice run in
Keeps
third.
on doing a great job all year long. I think Ganassi really plucked somebody along that they know is going to develop and really become a superstar.
Well, his superstar teammate is behind him. Dixon is 4th. And here he is.
Scott started in 5th place, the winner yesterday, for his 42nd career victory. There's Hunter Ray behind Dixon after the second of his 3 pit stops. So Hunter Ray is 18.8 seconds behind Rossi in 5th place.
You know, Eddie, when you're talking about a Chevrolet and the Chevrolet of a Roger Penske car, remember we talked about Roger runs this event here. So certainly wants to make sure that maybe one of his cars can stand the podium. They got blocked out yesterday.
How come you call him Roger? I still call him Mr. Penske.
There you go.
So 29 laps to go. We're across halfway. It's been kind of eventful so far. Alexander Rossi is having the most fun. He's out in front. We're back after this message and a word from your ABC station. Here's our Honda race rundown of what's happened in the Detroit Grand Prix so far. The race started with a bang, literally. The pace car coming off the pit lane lost control and hit the wall. That was with a celebrity pace car driver. Both occupants of that checked and released from the medical center. After a nearly 40-minute delay, the race was finally restarted, and no one has had a more eventful day than Sebastian Bourdais. The 4-time champion got a flat tire in an incident on the very first lap. Came down the pit lane, made that change. Then I heard those charge notes playing from the bugle.
And what a wonderful job he was doing, out-braking people into turns and a march all the way through underneath Marco Andretti here in turns 1 and 2. But that would also be an area where he had the mishap. The suspension piece looks like it broke in the back of the car, and around he goes, and drivers are missing him. This is all at 120 miles an hour.
Wow. 3 drivers have led the race. Alexander Rossi started on pole. He's led 32 of the 43 laps. Robert Wickens and Ryan Hunter-Reay have also spent 6 and 5 laps, respectively, out in front in the cycle of pit stops between the 2-stoppers and 3s. Interesting to watch on the track right now. Alexander Rossi continuing to lead on the 2-stop strategy. Ryan Hunter-Reay on the 3-stop strategy, running in 5th, 15 seconds behind him, but running laps about a second a lap quicker than Rossi.
We're going to see how that plays out in about, I would say, 6 laps.
Expect the leader to pit the 2-stoppers around lap 47, 48.
You know, but when I watch this right now, the car, Rossi's that you see right now, the Roth Home Mortgage car, that car is so smooth over all the bumps, so I think it's going to beat the driver up less, but they've done such a great job with their spring and shock selection here. That car looks like it's easier to drive than some of the other cars that the other guys are driving.
And that will make a difference, but the last lap, look what Hunter-Reay is doing.
And by the way, Hunter-Reay has again lowered the fast lap of the race. 2 laps ago.
But I got to talk about Power again. He's only 6.5 seconds behind Rossi and gaining.
So can Hunter-Reay get around Scott Dixon and not get held up and lose any time with these laps he's been pounding out? Dixon on the 2-stop strategy. And he stopped Dixon 2 laps earlier than Rossi. So Dixon might be trying to make a little more fuel here than perhaps Rossi is. And definitely trying to make a little more fuel than Hunter-Reay is.
Rossi is using every inch of the track. He's starting to peel those banners that are on the walls off.
See that?
You can't get any closer than that.
Car comes off a turn and it's moving around, waddling as I like to call it, and the car is almost not being able to keep under control.
You knew he was going to get that in.
I'm not going to take the bait. This is the last race, so I'm not going to say anything.
So there's Hunter-Reay, running right behind Dixon.
You saw some debris on the left-hand side. Hunter-Reay saw that coming off of 2
but Dixon
at 120 miles an hour and avoided that.
And
Yeah.
Graham Rahal just
That's a
caught
big
it.
piece, yeah.
That's carbon fiber.
And that actually needs to come off the circuit, so I'm sure race control will see that. And for drivers running over that, remember these tires are very thin. It's not like our road car tire where it's very thick with tread. These are very thin tires.
Absolutely, it takes nothing to cut a tire.
So there you see the two stoppers, top four versus Hunter Ray, who pitted very early. Stopped back at lap 10. And then again at lap 34. While Rossi stopped at 22. We expect to see him in probably 2 laps from now, maybe 3. Just the one caution in the race so far. It was the one on the very first lap, and here comes the race leader in. How many will follow him? Will Power is in. Jan?
Well, there's a whole host of people that are pitting now because they know they saw that debris. So we're going to see Scott Dixon. We're going to see Graham Rahal. While we watch Alexander Rossi, they want to be sure they're not caught by yellow. There's a front wing, a major front wing adjustment, 7.7. Rick?
Meanwhile, at the other end, we've got Will Power down here. No big adjustments. They're going to send him back out. First, they got to get him full. It's an 8.2 second stop.
Graham Rahal is finishing his stop. I can tell you, as Graham Rahal leaves, Scott Dixon had to wait for a moment. They had a lightning fast stop, but Graham Rahal was coming in. They were very wise in holding Scott Dixon for a moment, but they were not able to capitalize on a very fast stop.
A look at that pit exit. Here's Rahal coming in. See the fuel nozzle detached from the Dixon car. So that split second, costing Scott a little bit of ground. Now, when will Hunter Ray pit? Hunter Ray has gone to the race lead. He's only 5 seconds ahead of Alexander Rossi and needs to make another pit stop. Now, his pit stop would be shorter if he made it right now because he stopped 12 laps later than Rossi did. He'd take less fuel to make it to the finish on equal footing.
On that note, he should stay out as long as he can.
But risking a caution coming out, he will probably continue to try and take the clear racetrack ahead because he's got a good bit before he'll catch any traffic and try and continue to pound out those fast lap times.
Here's teammates battling each other.
Robert Wickens on the pit road along with Max Chilton. Hunter Ray, new fast lap. Rick?
Yeah, Robert Wickens brings the car in. And remember, early on in the race, he came in a little bit earlier. Their hope was to do a 2-stop strategy. They had to shift off to a 3. They make a minor wing adjustment, send him back out, but I don't think he's going to be able to gain enough in this situation.
Sliding out right in front of Marco Andretti.
Yeah, now he'll kick to the inside line here, try and make Marco go around on the high side. Remember, he's got cold tires, though, so he won't be able to brake as deep, and Marco gets around on the outside pretty easily.
So that puts Wickens back in 11th position for the moment.
So Hunter Ray has a 14.7 second advantage on Rossi. He needs more than that.
22 is the delta to make the pit stop and get back out. We'll see when we'll see Ryan Hunter Ray on pit road for his final stop. Pretty good. So what this segment of the race is all about now is Ryan Hunter Ray's gap to Alexander Rossi and their relative lap times. You see Hunter Ray beginning to catch some traffic. He did have to pass one car a minute ago, Santino Ferrucci, that slowed him down a bit.
Hit this lap, need a big one.
And there's the call.
And that big one he means is we need a really fast in-lap.
Mission overtake here.
Of which he pushes going down the straightaway, gives you that little extra boost of power we talked about. Can use it wisely. Driving hard enough, you see the inside tire lock up.
He's getting some new ones. That's okay when he comes in.
Use them up. There is Rossi hung up. Just for the moment. Jordan King gave way. Rene Binder was also there, I believe was the other car in the frame. Binder gives way down at turn 3. So here's that hard lap. Hunter Ray on the push to pass again down the backstretch towards turn 7.
What a drive Hunter Ray has put in today.
What's his nickname? Captain America?
Captain America.
Such a family man. attends the races with his wife and his kids.
Lap, hit this lap.
So big moment here. Hunter Ray coming up to the pit entry. His crew will go to work. How much fuel will they wait on, and how will he blend out with Rossi? Jan?
And what they believe they can do, they think they can do the overcut on Will Power. They do not believe that they can jump their teammate Rossi. They're hoping for a quick stop. Their last one was 8.8 seconds. They hope to do a little bit better than that, but the gap right now, oh, that's a lot better.
There you go.
6.3 seconds, and this should be able to do what we call the overcut on Will Power.
Yeah, you see the crew get into it also, pumping. Yeah, let's go.
Go, go, go. Yeah, he's got cold tires, and it is so hard to drive a race car when the tires are cold, when you got all that pressure on you, but he made it. They're way ahead of him.
So he comes out with a lap car between himself and Rossi and a lap car between himself and Power. Now, can he get back down to those lap times he was pounding out earlier?
He's got a brand new set of Firestones on, and they give you a lot of grip, and he only has 18 laps to go.
So Will Power with a solid day. Talked about one of our storylines entering the day, whereas Power and Newgarden needing to salvage a decent championship day. Well, Rossi's winning the race. He's the point leader coming in. But Will Power, after the difficult day yesterday, having a solid third place run if they can just bring it out these final laps.
I would have never thought they could have gotten that car to P3 watching them run yesterday. But it is Penske's after all.
That's true.
And like we talked about, a lot of pressure here because it is his event.
A lot of brain power.
This event, they say, reported brings in $58 million into the local economy. Roger's done so many good things here with the city and the Isle of Belle Isle. It's really incredible how we came back here. Remember when we first started coming back here? We raced the road course that you raced in Formula One, downtown course. We came here in 1992. Remember the big rain they had and all the tractor trailers got stuck? They had to get trucks coming back out on Monday to pull all the tractor trailers out of the swamp almost.
And now they're racing at this great track.
All right, so Hunter Ray has 7.6 seconds to try and make up.
This is sort of race like they all should be. It's just going to come down to raw speed from here to the end of the race. Raw speed, courage, stamina.
17 laps to go. We'll mind the gap between Rossi and Hunter Ray. Will a caution come out late and change the whole picture? We'll see. 15 laps to go, as you saw from some of those views of Alexander Rossi. He's not backing off 1 minute, using every inch of road here on the raceway at Belle Isle Park. His lap times have fallen about a half a second behind Ryan Hunter-Ray's now that Hunter-Ray has those new tires up to temperature and is going. But Hunter-Ray's got a 7.8 second gap to make up. That's the difference with only 14 laps to go. The math is not going to work out, barring a caution flag.
To put that in perspective, Rossi is 54 seconds ahead of Andretti, who has exactly the same car as his teammate. That's not a bad race, is it?
Marco just made another pit stop. He's had a tough day. They've made a few different pit stops now. Actually, an extra one. I think he's been on pit road 4 times.
So you have 2 Andretti cars running 1 and 2. And I think about yesterday, because Andretti cars were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The only guy that spoiled the party of an all-Andretti podium was Scott Dixon. And today, it will be Will Power probably standing up in the podium if things finish the way they are right now. And it will be a Chevy finally getting up in the podium here at Detroit.
But I think for Honda to come and win in Detroit, which is America's Motor City, and to have the Andretti team do it for them, that puts a lot of great things in their basket.
Well, this young man behind the wheel here, 26 years old. As you see, Andretti Autosport today, 1st and 2nd right now. And certainly all of their cars qualifying in the top 12 earlier today in the rain. Alexander Rossi has hit his stride. He hit it late in last season when he and his engineer kind of had an opportunity to step back and get back on the same page, reestablish their communication, kind of go back to some of the basics, if you will. And ever since then, just wow. 3rd at St. Pete, 3rd, 1st, 11th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd yesterday, his results on this season. That's pretty stout.
And I hate to keep going back to it, but he did 4 laps at Indy, which I have never seen any driver do what he did. He was passing cars on every side of the track, and it was if the waters were parting ahead of him.
And with cars this year that you weren't supposed to do that with.
No, everybody said it was impossible to do, and yet he pulled off the impossible. And you watch him drive today, he's using every bit of the track with so much confidence, and the speed is just there. I think Michael Andretti has really found the right driver here, and he's only going to get better.
Not just the right driver, but remember that Michael's team kind of got adrift a little bit technically a couple of years ago, but they retooled, reworked, reorganized, and have really become a steady force week in and week out now in this 2018 season for sure. Next race is next Saturday, Texas Motor Speedway, the high-speed 1.5 mile. NBCSN will have the coverage at 8 Eastern, and there on out the rest of the season and beyond. And we wish our friends there nothing but the best.
We'll be watching.
As we've been chatting here, it's actually 5.5 seconds between Rossi and Hunter Ray. Hunter Ray is banging off laps now, guy at 15.5, and Rossi the last time at 16.9, so 1.4 seconds quicker. And to say that Ryan Hunter Ray, look how close he's getting to the wall. He is starting to eat up that lead very quickly.
But he's running out of time, Alan.
Just set another new fast lap of the race on that last circuit by. Right, that's the difference. 5.6 seconds, 12 laps.
But the biggest thing right now is that I think Hunter Ray knows that Rossi can see him in his mirrors, and that makes a very big difference.
And don't forget also, because Ryan Hunter Ray pitted later, that he's got some tires that probably, if I can recall, have 6-7 laps less on them. So they're going to hang on a little bit better. He's going to continue to...
He's down to 3.7 seconds.
He just knocked almost 2 full seconds off the deficit in that last lap. Rossi did a 1:16.9. Hunter Ray did a 1:15 flat.
So for Alexander Rossi right now, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear.
Yes, and they're getting bigger.
And then there's that old saying, catching them's one thing, passing them's another.
He really has put on a display of how to drive a racing car today.
I assure you this, there is no one hungrier for a win on that racetrack today than Ryan Hunter Ray. It has been a frustrating few years for him. His last win was at Pocono in 2015, some 41 races ago. He's come oh so close, finished second a number of times since then. But second is a lot different than that top step on the podium.
Yes, it is.
You're paid to be on that top step. Let's see what the numbers look like at the start-finish line this time.
I think it'll be close to 2 seconds.
1:17 flat for Rossi, 1:15.3.
And the gap is exactly 2 seconds with
10 to go.
10 to go. I think Rossi better come up with plan B here.
How about this leader, Jan?
The radio communication to Alexander Rossi a few laps ago was, let's think big picture. They knew how fast that Ryan Hunter Ray was closing. That doesn't mean that he lets Ryan Hunter Ray go by any means, but it's reminding Alexander Rossi he's the championship point leader, and if his teammate comes up and has this kind of steam, they want him to remember, think big picture. This will be very interesting.
That almost sounds like a team order.
No, you're a driver. I was a driver. They're trying to give you common sense because we don't have common sense when it comes down to this sometimes. Well, you never did, but anyways.
Talk for yourself.
The cooler heads prevail on the timing stand than under the helmets is what I think you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, he's right there.
All right, he's on him. You think they both know if there was a Chevy behind him in third place?
No.
Oh.
Rossi's only concerned with the one car in his mirror because he can't see anybody else. Another 1.3 seconds shaved off by Hunter Ray that last lap.
But that's going to stop, though, because he's right on his gearbox. He can't go any faster until he passes him at this point.
You see the push to pass remaining. You'll see it turn green when they get on it. Still a lot of laps to go, 9.
And I think you'll see Rossi, if he gets any closer, to start changing his line and driving a little bit more defensively. But he also knows that that's his teammate.
Defensively, is that the European background he has from his days in Europe and Formula One? You were over there.
You can place your car differently to make somebody's pass a little bit more difficult and more risky.
They are going to catch a few lap cars, not all that far up the road in front of them, these two.
Very tricky corner coming up here.
Only 0.3 of a second gain that last lap. See, there's the lap traffic ahead.
Yep, now Ryan Hunter-Reay did go almost a second slower that lap, as you mentioned, Alan, because Eddie, as you're saying, he's now in the
Rossi with the lockup.
He is right on the limit. They're both right on the limit.
Feeling the pressure.
You do that too many times and you're going to have square tires, and race cars don't go well with square tires.
Don't forget the tires on Ryan Hunter-Reay's DHL machine are fresher than Rossi's.
I think he's going to go for it at the end of this straightaway.
No push to pass yet.
Nope. Rossi actually gains a little bit on the straightaway.
He does put the power down coming out of 6 going to 7 there.
Rossi's clipping the curbs, which we saw when Rahal did that yesterday. What happened? Now remember, Hunter-Reay is dealing with dirty air right now, and these cars are very sensitive to dirty air, as we've seen many times this year.
Coming to 7 laps to go.
You can hear the throttle application.
Gonna have to get closer.
Just a little bit less
Both
than
hit
it
the
would
push
be.
to pass.
This is where Rossi locked up his brakes again. And he's going down.
Rossi's off in turn 3. Hunter-Reay goes through to the race lead.
Goodness. Oh, God, that must be painful.
Now, Ryan Hunter-Reay hates that for a teammate, but he's sure pretty happy for himself.
And look who's second. Will Power in a Chevy.
Now this is going to mix up the point standings, that's for sure. And that was the message to Alexander Rossi from his pit lane. Think of the big picture.
This happened just because of the pressure that Hunter-Reay was putting on him. He's right in his gearbox. Look at this.
So bumpy. Look at the cars jostle around.
Goes to brake.
There, it's locking
and
up.
Cars don't turn too well when they lock up the front brakes.
And now one of the tires flat on the 27. And a win getting away. Now he's got to try and salvage some kind of a finish.
Oh, he's got to be careful the cars that are coming up behind him. All Hunter-Reay has to do right now is finish the race.
So everybody at home wonders why we have an ABS braking system on our road cars. That's the reason there, so you don't lock up the wheels.
Rossi right now in 6th place as he limps around the racetrack, trying to get to the pit lane here. In another, he's got another 5 turns to go before he gets to the pit lane.
Look at the vibration in the steering wheel.
Hunter-Reay has 16 seconds on Power, and he only has 6 laps to go.
And this is an opportunity just to replace that tire to try to get Alexander Rossi home, but just the frustration and the letdown for this team. It's hard to put into words when they certainly had radioed to him, let's think big picture. He tried to go for the win, and boy, did it all come unglued in turn number 3.
Yeah, sure enough. So Rossi now returns in 13th position. Here it is from on board the 27.
I think some of the function of this, guys, as you see the tires lock up, is that Ryan Hunter-Reay, probably 7 or 8 laps fresher tires, just could get in the braking zone a little deeper.
This happened just because Hunter-Reay was putting pressure on him. That's what happens. Well, what a drive from both of them.
Do you think the crew's not emotionally into it. Look at that.
And that's with another one of his cars benefiting and taking the lead.
Yes.
Well, 1-2 sounds better than just one, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Hunter-Reay now, the race leader, coming up to 4 laps to go. There is some lap traffic ahead of him that he will deal with, but as you mentioned, Eddie, he's got a massive lead on Will Power, 16 seconds back to second place. You can't put the exclamation point enough on the laps that he was pounding out earlier in the race when they committed to the 3-stop strategy and got him into open traffic, and he kept setting fast lap. Then he came off the pit lane again after that 3rd stop and even lowered those fast laps to close down that huge gap and put the pressure on Rossi that resulted in what we saw.
And we never thought when we saw him behind Rossi when he was like 8 seconds behind that he was going to catch him. And yet he just kept going at it, and now he could almost stop for a cup of coffee and still win.
The math didn't work, right? But the fall off on Rossi's car and the laps that Hunter-Reay was able to put in, all of a sudden...
the math looked bad, but we were not accounting for Hunter-Reay's speed. I love races that come down to speed.
The speed, the brilliant drive, and the tenacity that he had, and I think about that even with his career in a sense that, remember, he wandered around with different IndyCar teams for quite some time and couldn't get on a full-time ride, and then ended up getting with Andretti, and everything has gone right for him ever since that point in time.
So Will Power, after Rossi's problems, is going to wind up salvaging a great day in the championship. One of our storylines starting the day. Rossi's going to slide back to 3rd if they finish as they're running now, with Scott Dixon running 4th in the race, slotting in 2nd in points. Leaving here, Josef Newgarden will be the tough one on the weekend. He's going to fall all the way back to 5th in the championship. Newgarden running in 16th place right now after the tough trip into the tire barrier in qualifying this morning in the rain.
Whenever you want to measure...
Just leave it in wheel 7, plenty of a lead. Don't need to get mixed up with...
Whenever you want to measure a driver's performance, always look where they are in comparison to their teammates. Today, Power was way better.
Power running 2nd, Pagano running 10th, and Newgarden running in 15th place. Some other notables, Ed Jones running 3rd, really solid drive for Ed.
In front of, what's that gentleman's name?
Yeah,
Dixon?
One spot in front of Dixon, and about 2 seconds, second and a half in front of him on the racetrack. Graham Rahal, after yesterday's disappointment, what a job by his team overnight to stay until 1 o'clock in the morning to prepare the backup car. And Rahal qualified 9th, and he's running in 5th position now. Much needed good day for him. Tony Kanaan had the spin on the outlap for qualifying this morning. He's going to come back and run inside the top 10. He's running 7th right now. And Charlie Kimball looking to get a top 10 for the very young to IndyCar Carlin team.
A team that he drove for early in his career. Matter of fact, when you go through a lot of the IndyCar drivers, they've probably touched Carlin either sometime in North America or with their teams in Europe at some point in time. A very well-regarded team, and as you mentioned, Alan, a young team.
2 more.
But certainly they're going to be here for a long time. 2 laps left for Ryan Hunter-Reay.
And once again, this track has proved to be very punishing for anybody that makes a mistake. And rewarding for those that don't.
Hunter-Reay going to have a good day where the championship is concerned as well. Started the weekend 57 points off the lead. Stands to close about 26 of that off with a win today and put himself up to 4th in the championship with a lot of racing yet to be done over these summer months.
You know, throughout the weekend, we've talked about how diverse the drivers need to be. That was like when we did it in the series, short ovals, high-speed ovals, road courses, street courses. And to get to Texas next week on a 1.5 mile high bank, 28 degrees, that's one that I always love. But so diverse these drivers have to be. Flip the switch for next week and onto the oval and the high banks.
It probably is the most competitive racing series in the world right now.
Still got a 13-second lead on Will Power. And coming up to see the white flag and start the final lap.
White flag, still plenty of pace between you and Will. Don't need to do anything with Hinch here.
A year ago, Graham Rahal had as good a weekend as you could have in this unique doubleheader weekend at Belle Isle. He won both races. Well, Ryan Hunter-Reay finished 2nd yesterday and is on track to win today. next best thing, I guess.
Think of how many times that Ryan Hunter-Reay has been unlucky here in this last year or so. Getting very close, and obviously close to Indy a couple more times too, but getting knocked out one time in the pit lane with his teammate. I mean, always competitive. Maybe not the most lucky guy that there has been, but certainly one of the most competitive.
The one constant with Hunter-Reay is that he does not know how to give up. And he's blindingly fast when you give him a car as he wants it.
Just a few more corners to go. Remember when he won the Indianapolis 500 4 years ago? He said he was just a proud Florida boy. The trip back to Fort Lauderdale tonight is going to be a happy one because he's going to have his first trophy since 2015. Checkered flag, 17th career win. Ryan Hunter-Reay does it in Detroit.
Ryan, awesome. Unbelievable, those 2 middle stints. Fastest lap by a second. Awesome ride, awesome. Great work in the pits, guys. Good job, guys. Yes!
What a drive. Just inspiring. You'll see the victory lap, and then we'll get the victory interview coming up from Detroit. Ryan Hunter-Reay, the winner, while you were watching the cool-down lap and those messages, his strategist Ray Gosselin came on the radio and said, "I will show you the lap times later." He said that might have been your best drive ever. Hard to argue with the performance that Ryan Hunter-Reay put on today here in Detroit, just knocking out fast lap after fast lap after fast lap and putting enough pressure on Alexander Rossi to come away with the win.
And as you're mentioning those laps, Alan, they were qualifying style laps, and his fastest lap is almost a second quicker than the next person on the day, so that's pretty impressive.
There are the championship standings. Look left column before the Indy 500, and now after the second of the Detroit doubleheader races. What a big month it was, a big 2 weeks it was, with the double points at Indy for the 500, and now the 2 races here. Scott Dixon helping himself greatly. Sebastian Bourdais having a tough weekend here in Detroit both days and sliding a good bit back. And Josef Newgarden from the lead to 39 points down in 5th, leaving Detroit.
Yes, he's got a lot of work to do after this weekend. If I was a young driver starting an IndyCar right now, I would watch Hunter-Reay's performance every night before I went to bed. That was quite impressive, wasn't it? That's how it's done.
17th career win, 8th win on a road and street circuit. Let's quickly go to Rick DeBrule.
Well, Alexander Rossi just got out of his car. Obviously a very disappointing and very frustrating day for Alex. Alex, let's talk about those last few laps.
I don't really have an answer for you. Need to talk to these guys. We don't understand, so I don't have anything to say.
All right, once again, very frustrated, as you can imagine, from Alexander Rossi.
Trying to figure out what happened that left him at the checkered flag. A disappointing 12th position. And a look at the Scott Fountain and victory circle here on Belle Isle. It will be a happy sight to see the top step on that for Ryan Hunter-Reay. Tireless worker in support of raising money to support cancer research after losing his mom to cancer. And a tireless worker on the racetrack today and this weekend for sure. Second on Saturday and a winner on Sunday.
Doesn't even look like he worked that hard, does he?
First stop for Ryan Hunter-Reay, of course, to give congratulations to the crew, to Michael Andretti, team owner. There's no question this was a team effort today. Boy, sometimes you win a race with strategy, sometimes you do it with pace. Today you did it with both. And your engineer said he thinks this might be your best drive ever. What do you think?
After I took that second set of blacks, primaries, the Firestones, I started getting sync with the car and the balance started coming to me. I was really worried in the beginning. I was really loose. And then as I got into a rhythm, the car was doing everything I needed it to, everything. And when we started that last stint, Rossi was more than a straightaway ahead of us. I couldn't even see him. And I just put my head down and just the thing was flying. It was such a great car. So happy for this 28 DHL Honda team. I wish my wife and the boys were here with me because they're the best, and this has been a bit of a long time coming, and that was going to be a heck of a fight at the end, but good thing we pressured them into it, and we're here in victory lane. Awesome. This car deserves to be where it is right now, that's for sure, and that was a heck of a car, heck of a strategy. Great in the pit lane, and I drove my rear end off.
And what was the mindset? Because at that point, when you closed in on Alexander, he obviously is a teammate. They were telling him, think big picture. But then you saw the first puff of smoke. Do you think you're going to wait to see, or were you going to press the issue?
Yeah, I was really strong out of turn 2, and he wasn't. So I kept pushing the button. I knew I was going to get a run sooner or later, just had to be patient with it. I was going to try inside, outside. Saw a puff of smoke once, twice, and I knew I had to keep pressuring him there. Once you see that monkey up in the tree, you got to keep shaking it, and he fell out, and he did a great job, though. You know, he's been so strong. I think, you know, this weekend was really tough on the brakes. I locked up a few times there, almost went in just like he did, so he's done a fantastic job this season, and I'm absolutely, this 28 team's there to challenge, and we're going for the championship, and this goes to show we're here to stay.
Well, he's talking about the championship. He now moves up to 4th in the championship, his first win, as we mentioned, since Pocono in 2015, Alan.
Jan, thanks. A day that started in the most bizarre fashion with a crash of the pace car, wound up with one of the most inspired drives we've seen in some time. And Ryan Hunter-Reay, the winner today in Detroit. World News or your local news is next on ABC, except on the West Coast. Later tonight, Game 2 of the NBA Finals starts here at 7:30 Eastern. Thanks to this wonderful crew for a long run covering the IndyCar Series. Treasure them all. Treasure every moment. We sign off with Ryan Hunter-Reay's inspiring, brilliant performance as winner of Detroit Grand Prix race number 2, Alan Bestwick, for our entire team. Thanks for watching.